start the program.
That's 31 years, huh?
All right.
Yeah, me and her same birthday.
Okay.
So
I'd like to thank you all for attending this event today. It is Juneteenth weekend, and we are very happy to have a book launch party and celebration for the Learner's Creed, the Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell story, 93 years of living a blessed life.
Deborah, tell everybody on there to read their line, please. Okay, all right. Yeah, tell me, everybody.
We're having some technical issues, but it is a hybrid, virtual, and in-person event.
Yeah.
Yeah, but everybody else is okay.
Okay, that's what we're doing. That's okay, that's it. That's good.
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you go.
All right. Okay.
Sorry, can I just I'm going to go around muting all of the attendees other than Miss Ernestine.
Yeah.
Give us a moment.
Mom Ernestine, you look nice today. You look wonderful.
Thank you.
I tell you.
Okay. All right. Looks like we are got our technical issues resolved. So once again, my name is Tom West. I'm the Adult Services Coordinator and Program Coordinator for the Brazoria County Library System. And we are very pleased to host this book launch event for Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell, who was born here in Angleton and raised here and got her start and a long career in education. And the book is called The Learner's Creed, and it's 93 years of living a blessed life. And joining us also here is Dr. Craig T. Follins, who co-wrote the book with Ernestine. And I'm just going to read you the biography in case you're not familiar with these two people. So just as from the back of the book, which I read, and it's a really good book, so I encourage you all to read that. Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell retired in 1988 from the Houston Independent School District as principal of Charlotte B. Allen Elementary School after 36 years as an educator. She has taught in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Angleton, Texas, and Houston, Texas. She was also valedictorian of the 1946 graduating class at Marshall High School right here in Angleton, Texas. Very great accomplishment. Great accomplishment. So proud. And then also joining us here in person in the building is Dr. Craig T. Follins. He is a noted author, educator, and speaker and global thought leader. He is passionate about social change for the historically marginalized and ensuring that history includes many diverse voices and narratives. He resides in Conroe, Texas. This is his third book, and we are so happy to have him with us today. And again, thank you all for attending this event. And again, this is kind of new for us. It's a hybrid event, in person and virtual, and we're so happy to have Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell with us from Missouri City. And I think you're there also with your daughter, Deborah Castleberry, who is also joining us via Zoom.
Recording in progress.
Oh, good. All right. So, I'd like to thank the staff of the library system who have been helping us out here, and Lena Lewis, who's the branch manager, and other people here. The staff has been wonderful, and we're so happy to have Ernestine joining us virtually in our hometown here of Angleton. Moving on, if I can read my notes here. Is her brother with us today? Is he on there or not? I don't.
Yes, Richard should be on.
Yes.
Okay, he's in.
Okay, so we want to have some remarks.
Introduce him.
Yes. Joining us virtually is the Reverend Richard Earl Stewart, who is Ernestine's brother, and he's in, I think, Nashville, Tennessee. Is that right? And he will be joining us with an opening prayer, I believe.
Reverend, please go ahead and say the prayer. Reverend?
And as we unmute.
Yes,
Can everybody hear us?
yes,
Yes,
yes, please.
Perfect.
Take your time.
So we light this candle to invite the Holy Spirit to come into this place to bring in new awareness of hope, health, and healing.
And let us pray. God is a good God. God don't never change. Dear God, we assemble at this moment and in these various places around the nation to honor your faithful servant, Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell. God is a good God, and blessed is her name. Dear God, you blessed her 94 years ago when you brought her into a family of 3 big sisters and 1 big brother. A 5th child is who she is. Destined to live out the story she now shares through a powerful book, The Learner's Creed. Her story is compelling and is a guideline for how to do your will. Dear God, as she walks among us and your Son, Jesus the Christ, as the story of her written word leaps out from these pages, may they touch the lives of many. She shows us that we have a story to tell, whether written or verbalized. As Ernestine has done, so may we live our story, so that your will is manifested through us and made alive to all who come into the orbit of our being. As she has loved, so may we love. In Christ Jesus our Lord we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. So, to kick things off, I'd like to ask Ms. Ernestine to share what it was like growing up here in Angleton all those years ago. I read the book, it was just fascinating to read about it, but can you share some of your experiences growing up here and what led you to write the book?
Thank you. Hello. Happy Father's Day and Juneteenth. My name is Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell, and we have gathered here to launch my first book entitled The Learner's Creed, the Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell story, 93 years of living a blessed life. This Juneteenth is a little different from the ones we have celebrated previously, but it is an important one because of a 95-year-old Black woman whose name is now Dr. Opal Lee. On June 17, 2021, President Joseph Biden signed the Juneteenth Independence Day Act into law that established June 19th of every year as a new federal holiday. Dr. Lee and I had attended writing classes back in 2007 under the instruction of Dr. Jericho Brown, a doctoral student at the University of Houston at that time. He is now the director of the writing program at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Brown won the Pulitzer Prize for his 3rd collection of poetry, The Tradition, in 2019. Dr. Lee and I remained in contact infrequently, so I contacted her and asked if she would join us on Zoom just to say hello to you. Of course, I wasn't surprised to hear that she would be too busy, but she responded very graciously and indicated that she felt very honored for the invitation. But at that same time, she would be walking 2 1/2 miles in celebration of Juneteenth. In appreciation for all that she has done for our race of people, at the end of my count of 3, let's give her a big hand and a big thank you. 1, 2, 3, thank you. Thank you. Needless to say, I'm very happy for this day, this gonna be very short, but I've got to thank some people. My memory is bad, and they helped me remember a whole lot of things. Needless to say, I'm very happy for this day. I think I'm the oldest former student from Abraham Barrington Marshall High School. And I must say that I have truly enjoyed reminiscing and writing about my growing up in Angleton, Texas. Please permit me to name just a few persons who were able to help me to remember names of persons I wrote about and were important to this project. And then I will stop and allow the program to proceed. The persons who helped me were Jackie Thomas, my niece Glover, my niece, Reverend Richard Earl Stewart, my brother, Deborah Castleberry, my daughter, Leon Hall Jr., my nephew, Gwendolyn Hall Phillip, my niece, LaWanda Hall Hammock, my great niece, Donna Ray Stewart, my nephew, Gladys Stewart, no relation, historian, Beverly Nelson, jack of all trades, niece, Joanne Hawkins, cousin, Velma Anderson, cousin, Corinne Allen, cousin, Sharon Glover, jack of all great trades, cousin, and Dr. Ronnie Evans, cousin. And now enjoy this day and take the time to share your oral history with someone. Now, you want me to tell you something? What was it?
Oh yes, about growing up here in Angleton and how you got the inspiration to write this book, which is amazing.
Okay. My background is from two families. The Macbeths, and some of you may be familiar with Macbeth, Texas. It's about 3 miles outside of Angleton. And the Stewarts. My mother from the Macbeth side of the family, and my father, the Stewarts. So I was doing research on my father's family because he was always talking about his family. That's why I learned about oral history, and I learned a lot just from him sitting on the front porch talking. But then my mother's family, the Macbeths, decided to have a reunion. And we had, I don't remember the year, but it was a big thing. There were about 600 of us showed up. And I do remember there were 2 students from that family who attended Rice, who did a lot to do with it, but I don't know where they are now. They're probably in Angleton. And then there was a lady, a relative that had done rock. But I was so interested, I asked questions. Tell me how I can do this. Tell me how I can do this. And once I started, I couldn't stop. I loved it. And if you haven't tried it, please do. It's so rewarding. And I ended up with about 2 binders that were about 6 inches high of just a collection. And so that's how I started with this writing.
That's great. And I know that you in the book you talk about you were also in several writing groups that helped you get along to
Yes,
nurture the project.
one of them was a writing group that Dr. Lee and I were in.
Mm-hmm.
I had been in that class 4 years. She was over in the last year, and we could tell that she was okay. She took that class over, and but anyway, we lost track of each other for a little while.
Uh-huh.
But I'll tell you about me chasing writing classes. I'd read the paper every day, and every now and then I'd see there was a writing class someplace, and I'd call. Many times it might be a half day, 1 whole day, maybe every Saturday for 12 weeks, and I'd drive wherever it was, or in the Houston area, I would go. And I would be the only black. But the thing that we found out, that we were more alike than different. And they liked my stories. They said that my stories were like looking at a movie. And my instructor told me that too. But anyway, I fell in and they had talking about the class I ended up in with Dr. Brown. I called, they said, you can come Wednesday, every Wednesday. And I showed up at 10 o'clock. And I was in that class for 4 years. That was the happiest time of my life. We had so much fun. And all of us were seniors. Most of us were former educators, retired. But that's how I started writing. Then I started doing public speaking after I retired. I enjoyed that too. Never charged one penny to anybody. I was just happy to go into public speaking. And I have a couple of them in my book. And one of them I really like is 1980. I gave it to my grandson. So, any other questions?
Well, speaking of reading the newspaper, you haven't seen this, but it was in today's paper in Angleton, the facts. Can you see that there? You're on,
Yes,
you're on the front page above the fold. Important honor for you here. The hometown paper is covering this event today. And again, as you mentioned, this is the Juneteenth weekend. And today was also the Juneteenth parade went right through Angleton, past the courthouse and everything that happened earlier today. And so, I mean, we're so happy to have you tie in with this event, and especially with your connection, with the woman who helped get this whole federal holiday going here. And it's like, you're there. And then in the book, and you've talked about through your life, is that you've met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you met former President Barack Obama. Can you share some of your insight, or how exciting that must have been?
Yes, I have been very, very fortunate to meet some very important people. I don't know how that happened, but it was really, I really enjoyed that. Dr. King had attended high school with two of my best friends. And you see them on the picture, they're sisters. One was married to Dr. Allen, who was the father of two girls, Allen girls. Daddy Allen and the sister, Alicia. And some of you know them. And anyway, I taught with one of the girls, the daughters. I taught first grade, she taught second. So I had gone to Angleton for the weekend to visit my family. And Doris called me and she said, hurry home, Dr. King is in town. We are going. It was to some program I think he was the speaker. I rushed home, got dressed, and we went. Now, they knew him, so it wasn't a big deal with them. But me, I took my program and got a signature. And I still have it locked up. My daughter had to tell me that I had to sit on a radio pad, and for everybody to see, I was so proud. She said, Mama, you better take that and lock that up. You know that's important. So I locked it away now. The president.
Obama.
President Obama. You want me to tell this, Kim? One of his Secret Service men was dating my granddaughter.
How convenient.
And they dated quite a while. And but anyway, so that's how they had the picture of me shaking his hand and write me nice. You would think they really knew me. They were the sweetest people. And they would write me nice little notes and made me feel real important. But anyway, as some of the dates, relationships, they decided that wasn't going to work. But let me tell you one thing happened though. He became one of the people that with the Bush. Okay. The young Bush. He became his Secret Service, and so he was moving to Dallas. So Kim got a chance to go to the White House and get ready to move him down to Dallas. And I have a picture now of she standing there between President Obama and this young man. So when I saw it, I said, Kim, did you tell him we had met him before? She said, Mama, I was in the hall hoping. Do you know where I was? I was so scared I couldn't even talk.
Oh,
Let's see, did anybody else that I met? I can't remember now.
Well, those are great stories, and you have those pictures in the book, which is really nice to see those. One of the things that I was struck by was in your memoir, you talk about, growing up, going to school to become an educator, but we hear so much of, segregation and then desegregation, and there's been so much focus on the kids and everything, but you were right there, the teachers had to get integrated too, and you were there, one of the first ones to be, put into the white schools and everything, and then working your way up to be, a principal and everything. That was an amazing accomplishment. And can you highlight some of that history?
That was it wasn't easy. I had worked as all black student in where the slaves first landed in Houston. It's called Fourth Ward now, and they're very political. And Freedman's Town. So when I first arrived in Houston from Angleton, I had taught, I think, a year at least in Angleton, and I came transferred here. Well, they sent me to that school, and most of the students were very poor, but now, because of where it was, you also had some professional people in the neighborhood too. And by the way, I taught Representative, what's her name? Sophronia Thompson's daughter. And now I was a new teacher in Houston. And to this day, I don't know why the principal put her daughter in my class. I didn't know anything about Houston. It was a better school than Angleton, of course. But anyway, every now and then I wasn't really running in her crowd, but she'd see me and she'd bring people over to me and say, this is the best teacher, first grade teacher in the world. She taught my daughter Sarah. By the way, she's about Sarah. And so when I did get a chance to talk to her, when I asked her would she write it, say something in my book, I said, tell me. I said, how did your daughter get to be in my class? I said, I come from a small country town, didn't know anything, didn't have my master's degree. I said, all the teachers there had that master's degree. And I never could figure out why she put Sarah in my class. She said, because what I said, you were good. You were a good teacher. So anyway, I decided then, I'm going to be a principal. And I want to have a school just like, what's the name of that school? Gregory. So I didn't have my master's degree. So I had to get my master's degree first. I lost 12 hours because I divorced my husband, raising my daughter by myself. So I couldn't go to school. I lost 12 hours, had to get those back. But I didn't stop. I finally got my master's degree. And because my major was not elementary, it was a homemaking major, I felt like I didn't qualify. So every workshop, anything they had, I went. I wish you could have a stack of certificates that I have. Because I never thought I was good enough. So then I decided to work on my master's degree. And my professor suggested I get my administrative certification. I talk a lot, as you can see. So all the classes, I would talk. I should have been on the debating team because I would actually debate my classmates and my instructor. My instructors liked that. Sometimes my classmates didn't, unless they were in my group. We'd always be in a group, they were in my group. But anyway, two of my professors said to me, they were getting ready to integrate the schools. And they said, why don't you get your administrative certification? And I said, I don't want to be a principal. No, they said to be a supervisor. I said, I don't want to be over 40 schools. I said, if I get it, I want to be over one school, my school. They said, well, okay, do that. So they kept telling me, and finally I got my master's degree. I turned around, went back, got my administrative certification. And I was on my way. I ended up in a crossover situation. And as I said, I was going to all of these workshops. So my co-worker said, why are you still going workshops and things? They're not going to take a black teacher out of Reverend. So I said, well, I don't know. I'll be ready if they do. They do cross me over. I said, but I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a principal. So I stayed. And a telephone rang they asked me to come to the interview. And I had to go take a test. I think it was. And I was passed that test. And there was a lady, friend of mine, working in that department. And she said, you made the highest score on that test. There were 12 of us. I believe I was the only black. So anyway, I didn't believe her. But she said, call Mr. Jones, Dr. Jones, and ask him what was your score. I said, I'm never going to call Dr. Jones and ask what my score was. But before I could do that, they called me, come in for an interview. Well, I'm thinking, I don't want to be in a crossover situation. I want to be a principal. Well, I did. I went to the interview. Just common sense question. Common sense. Wasn't anything hard about it at all. So I left and went home. A couple of days, Mrs. Gerber, the principal at Cope Elementary, one of the top schools in HISD, called me. And she said, I need a black teacher. And if you'll come, be my first black teacher, I'll help you become a principal. She said, I want you to come out, meet some of the parents and the teachers, and you don't have to worry about a thing, because you already have the job. And that's what she said to me. So I did, and they were they were just beautiful. And let me just stop there. I had to tell you about those students. It was Jews, the whole neighborhood were Jews. I didn't know that because they hadn't told me that. But when I tell you those students made me a good teacher, I taught first grade. And I really had to jump rope. But they made me a good teacher. But I wanted to make them for 1 year. They moved me to 3rd grade. The second year in 3rd grade, when I arrived that summer, in the fall, Secretary she said, your student that you had in first grade, the parents, see, they didn't transfer out there. I come from grade where the children, but the same students became my students in the third grade. And I said, and she said, and there are some students from other schools out here that the parents want in your room. They said, you're good with boys. Well, I was. I really was. Those boys, they drove me crazy because we would have so much fun with them trying to outsmart me. But anyway, I said, well, now, are these discipline problems? And she said, she's screening them. So she said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You have my support. So sure enough, the first day, they showed up in my class. Oh, they were so glad to see me, and I was so glad to see them. The parents were glad to see me. But then I had some new students. So I always had an ambassador. Well, I had already met the ambassador. She's the one, or he, would greet anybody that came to the door so I wouldn't have to stop teaching to find out what they wanted. And I had a handout explaining to the visitors about my classroom. It was very well organized, and my students, they loved it. So anyway, after she had given them the information about the class, the parents took a seat, the principal stayed with them, and we did a few things to entertain them, and they left. And I was there 2 more years. And when I left there, I was really ready to be a principal. But it took me 4 more years. And that's when it wasn't so much fun. So they would put a black principal with a white principal. And everybody just didn't want me. So I finally got with Ms. Moore. And Ms. Moore was president of the principal's organization. So she wasn't there very much. So I actually ran at that. And finally she told me, you ready to be a principal. But I didn't get it. I had one more school. And what I did, oh, she wants me to tell you the students I had. I had Valentine's granddaughter. I had, what's the hotel name? Shamrock Hilton's granddaughter. I had some jewelry stores. Levis Jeweler's son. Anyway, I had those students in my class. That's why I told you they made me as a teacher. I'm gonna give you examples of difference in the children. I had taught at Gregory. We had one field trip every year. So we would go to the airport. When I would be in first grade. And they would we'd get on an airplane and they would give them a toy airplane. And the story was about the Taylor children. When I got to Colton, we still had the book with the Taylor children. Now, ask me, did I have to take them to the airport? No, they had their own airplane. So now you know why I said they made me as a teacher. Okay, I'm gonna let you ask me.
Well, those are some great stories. I wanted to mention you did mention the Gregory School, and the African American Library at the Gregory School has your papers and everything.
Yes.
So if anyone's doing research, they can go there and find out all that stuff, and that's.
They surely can, but can I just tell you about that?
Yes.
They were getting ready to desegregate Houston.
Oh yes.
And it was a library at that time. They were getting ready to really think of a library, and for the African Americans. And so they asked the former teachers to come. I was the only one that showed up. Only one. And they asked me would I help them to encourage some of the higher educators, the superintendents, and people with high authority in the district to come and be interviewed so they could put it in the library. So I did. I worked with them for about 3 years, but I got in there too. And I really enjoyed that. But eventually they put other people, they were first doing it for Houston people, but I got some Angleton people in there too. I think there's a statue out in Angleton in the front. I got that young man in there, and several others. So they did venture out and put other people in that library there.
Thank you very much. That's a great story. I want to mention that if anyone in the Zoom audience has any questions, that they could put their questions in the chat, and then we will get to them a little later on when we open up the event here for questions. So be sure to put them in the chat, and then we'll open up for questions here as well in just a moment. And my notes are here. I get so nervous because you're just so accomplished and everything. It's like, my goodness, I'm talking to a legend. We talked about the writing class and everything, but are there any stories that you'd like to share, from the book? Some of the stories there, you have some great stories in the book I wanted to mention. I was particularly interested when you talked about, I didn't realize, like, when you grew up in Angleton and stuff, like with the movie theater and stuff, and you had to sit upstairs and all that stuff, and it was like, that was an interesting story, and growing up on, one side of the tracks was the white neighborhood, the other side of the tracks was the black neighborhood, and it was like, just such a different time.
My brother, he did the prayer. He and I, we were only two left, and we talk all the time. He lives in Nashville, I live in Missouri City. But, when you're growing up, you don't realize how blessed you are. I'm talking about the parents. My father and my mother, our mother, our father. And after you grow up, you get married and have a family, then you realize what your parents went through. And so in the book, I enjoyed writing that part about my mother and my father. And but we were very poor, but we didn't know it. Because they were smart enough to make sure we never did without things we needed. I'll tell you how they did it. My father held as many as 3 jobs down at a time. He was a Methodist minister. He was a carpenter. He built churches, built homes. He and my brothers. He drove the school bus. He was a janitor. Anything, and jack of all trades. When he got off of work, we had to wait till he come home to eat because he had to say the grace. And we would stand and we look down the street to see him. Finally, we see him come and we run in and tell Mama, "Here come Papa, Mama, here come Papa." And she set the table now. We had to sit down and you pass that bowl around and you take your food out of it. I don't know where they learned that. I guess working for white folks. But that was the way, everything was just so, correct. And so, anyway, sometimes we'd have a friend be playing outside because that parents, my mother didn't work outside at home. She was taking washing and ironing. But anyway, they knew when they went home, they might not have anything to eat for another couple of hours. So they say, "Can I eat supper with you?" I said, "Yes." But my mother had a rule. Sure, you can have one friend, but that just means you will have one less biscuit, and you have to divide your meat. But you can eat all the vegetables if you want. That was the rule. And we didn't mind it because we wanted that friend to be there. And the friend knew she wasn't gonna get a whole piece of meat, she'd get a half. We had 3 meals a day. Now, the school gave, it was a poor neighborhood. They would give, I call it government food. They fed them at noon. My father had so much pride. You're not gonna eat that government food. So what he did, he made sure we have a vegetable garden, we had fruit trees, we had chickens, pigs, potato bin, he had a storage room for meat, and he would kill the meat, kill the cow from the man that he worked for, and then he get, part of it. Now, he would take some of that meat that he got from that cow and give it to people in the neighborhood. That's how they lived back in those days. Then he killed a hog, do the same thing. And that was in the smoke room, whatever it was. So when my mother decided to cook, all she had to do was step out her back door, and she come in there with a meal, ready for us. So, let me tell you about the hobos. We noticed that we come home at lunchtime, there would be 2 and 3 hobos sitting in the kitchen eating, mama feeding them. Well, my daddy told her, you stop doing that. She said, don't tell me, it just might be Jesus. It might be Jesus. So, then, Angleton at that time was surrounded by, I think they still do it, but 5, what you call, prisons, surrounded, but they would get out. Now, back in that day, they didn't do anything to get in prison, they needed to work, so they pick you up and put you in prison. So the word would come down, somebody has gotten out of prison. So they find out who it was. So I see mama take a pair of my father's pants, so I just hang them online. Maybe take a little food in the bag and put it there, and they can hide maybe in the wood pile. So my mother would say, that boy didn't do that. If she knew who it was, that boy, he didn't do that. So they took care of the prisoners. The prisoners weren't bad, like, now you wouldn't dare do that now. But they, like I said, they would just pick them up and put them in so they could work on the prison farm. But anyway, my brother and I talk about those days, and it really lets us know how blessed we were. We were never hungry. We always had, they called them hurricanes at that time, always, at least one a year. And we never felt afraid. We always would come out and go up to the courthouse. I think they had 5 floors. I think we stayed on the 4th floor. I think the jail was on the 5th floor. And now we didn't sit with the whites. The whites lived down on the 3rd floor. I don't remember. But my mother would start frying chicken so she could feed people. And she had, 5 children to feed. But you see her frying chicken and making, we never bought bread from the store. We call it white bread. No, she would cook, make biscuits, and take it up there. Now, my daddy would leave every now and then. He had on boots, because he's wading in water, to go check on the house. But we were never afraid. We felt so safe with my daddy. Never were afraid. We knew everything was going to be fine. He come back, house still standing. And my mama would feed. And finally, he might have to go and buy something because if we up there 2 or 3 days, we eat up all the food because she fed everybody up there too. But anyway, we talk about that. I want to tell you about that high school. Marshall High School. Let me tell you about Marshall High School. We had all black teachers, naturally. And they would tell you, you can be anybody you want to be. We believed it. And we we would compete, encourage for the interscholastic league. And let me tell you what Professor Wright did, that's our principal. And man, he made me who I am. You had to learn more, you had to study spelling, math, debating, and you would stand in this hall, in this building. Here he comes running. What are you standing here for? What were you for? I said, study. Come with me, I need you for math. So you had to study all of them, all the subjects, and we did it. And many times we get at least second place and third place. We may not get first, but we came home with our head high because they told us we could do it. And can you believe we studied? We learned the spelling, math, whatever, was debating, whatever he needed you for, you had to go and do it. Now I'm sure other smaller towns did it too, West Carolina, but I know what Angleton did. And can I just take a minute to tell you what Angleton produced, those black people? I won't take but a minute, but it's right at the beginning of the book. Here it is. The old colored public school located in Angleton produced some of the most prominent and productive African Americans in the history of a great nation. Here are just a few private and public school teachers, college professors, a doctor, a lawyer. Now I tried to put that name because they had this book, I want them to show it to their children. The lawyer was Von Shelton, a chaplain, lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, that's my brother in the parade, Richard Stewart. A pilot, Joseph Robinson, in the United States Air Force. A Hall of Fame football player, Earl Thomas. I know you heard of him. With the world champion Kansas City Chiefs, and a former student who represented our country in Moscow, Russia, as a great sprinter, and eventually played with the professional football team, Charles Frazier. Shared while he duty received the Purple Heart in Vietnam. And Ransom Lundy was a mortician in Galveston, Texas. That was also the recipient of a National Merit Scholarship and a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor for heroic action while serving in the United States Army during the Vietnam War, the clan assassin. That's the chapter statue at the courthouse in Angleton. Clara Robinson was a colonel in the Air Force, and she received her PhD at the age of 71. Oscar Lee Payne, and I call it Oscar Lee, and Elsie Miles received their PhDs. Mary Ann Scott and Herman Barnes were pharmacists. These are just a few who benefited from the nurturing of the old colored public school. It truly takes a village to raise productive citizens. Now, this part of this book I'm really proud of.
Yes, it's a great part of the book, and there's so many wonderful stories in that book, and we thank you for sharing some of your favorites. I do see we have a few questions in chat, so why don't we check a few questions if we can. No questions yet? Oh, I thought there were. Anyway, does anyone here in the audience have any questions? Oh, yes.
I do. Who's your favorite writer?
Who's your favorite writer?
Me?
Yes. That's a great answer.
I love it, really. I can't see very well now. I can't hear very well, and I'm forgetful. So I just have to. I'm my favorite person.
Well, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. Any other questions in the audience? Oh, yes.
I'm Ernestine. Hi, this is Craig. You're doing fantastic. Yeah. This is Craig. You're doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Talk about the Learner's Creed and how significant that is, and really in good detail, because each one of those lines represents a monumental task for a student, and also talk about the involvement with the parents. And please go ahead and do that depth with that, please.
Okay, they had removed prayer from the school. And my school at that time was in a very, very poor neighborhood. So the parents would drop the children off at school around 7 in the morning. And of course, nobody was there but the janitor, the people in the kitchen. So they would play, get all dirty, and some of them did eat breakfast there. But then by the time the bell rang at 8 o'clock, they were very hyper. And reading was the first thing we taught in the morning, because it's so important. It would take the teachers about 30 minutes to get them to settle down. So I had a meeting with them, and I said, we've got to do something. We've got to come up with something so that they realize when they come in that they're ready to go to work. But let me tell you what I did first, though. I started arriving at school at 7 o'clock. By the time they were there, I brought them in and set them in the cafeteria, and I supervised them. And then I had my work. I was sitting there doing my work. But anyway, I finally hired an aide, and she got that 7:15. So that helped. But anyway, then I said, let's go home. Come up with something similar to a prayer that they will say, and then sit down and go to work. Well, we came back the next day, no one had done anything but me. So I had my secretary to run off a copy for everybody, and we met, and I read mine. They loved it. Miss Mitchell, we'll use that. We'll use that. Let me tell you what we did, though. We first took that poem. Should I read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. The Learner's Creed. I believe in myself and I can't hardly see this. And my ability to do my best at all times. Just for today, I will listen, I will see, I will speak, I will feel, I will think, I will reason, I will read, I will write. I will do all of these things with one purpose in mind, to do my very best and to not waste this day. For this day will come no more. And let me tell you what those teachers did. They taught that for a week. They was telling each line. What does that mean when we say, I will listen? Oh, they raise their hand, they tell exactly what you're going to do, what that means, give examples. I will think. And they did that for a week. But then we also had a quick meeting with parents. So they could continue that when they got home working on their homework. In other words, you're teaching your children how to study and how to take responsibility for their own learning. That's really what we were doing. We didn't know it at the time, but that's what we were doing. But anyway, I had such good teachers, and there's a copy of one in the book. Principals would bring their teachers to my building to observe my teachers teach. But they get there in the morning and they would hear the children saying that over the intercom. So when we get back to the library to ask the teacher questions about her teaching, the principals wanted to know, and the teachers, well, what was that we heard? What were the children saying? And we told them the Learner's Creed. Can we have a copy? So my secretary would run off some and give them to them. But then I got word that some of the schools, if the school was named Mary Jane, they were saying Mary Jane's Learner's Creed. They were jumping rope to the Learner's Creed. They were singing about the Learner's Creed. Oh boy, I blew up. And we had a superintendent's bulletin. And I asked them to put it in the superintendent's bulletin. And I had written it on the screen. And it was supposed to be, treat it the way I want it. And you don't name it Mary Jane. So, anyway, it became so popular, I went into business after I retired. I sold bookmarks, I sold t-shirts. I started wearing one of my t-shirts today. I wore, what else did we have? We had posters, we had big banners that you could put in your hall in the library or in the cafeteria. We would sell t-shirts. We had t-shirts. Anyway, I made good money. But I didn't know what I was doing. And I sold it for about 3 years. I got tired. I did it by myself. I didn't have any help. I wish I had Dr. Follins at that time. I'd be a millionaire today. It's all over the world. And let me tell you what I did with it too. I had Deborah had some brochures, and if there was a convention in town, education, she would take and have and she would pass out the bookmarks, and pass it out. So it just went all over the world. I found out a young lady, a former teacher friend of mine, she was in the army, and she'd been in Russia. No. But anyway, it was overseas. And Germany, that's where she was. She came back, and she knew I was principal. She visited my school, because she wanted to let me know that she had used that form. Now, this is somebody I knew, and she let me know that. That wasn't that. That made me feel so good. But anyway, I want to tell you, I must tell you. I told you, Dr. Craig, Dr. Robert, he loves research. He found this for me. Enhancing Literacy Engagement, a case study of perceptions of administrators, teachers, and parents about the principal's role in enhancing literacy engagement in a Texas school. A dissertation presented to the faculty of the Department of Education, Sam Houston State University, in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Education by Ruth Robert Sterling Davis, December 2018. And the very first line he says this, Chapter 1, Introduction. Retired school principal Ernestine Mitchell wrote in the Learner's Creed, I will do my best not to waste this day, for this day will come no more. Her words inspired and directed me when I exited from the corporate world to become a teacher. As a teacher, I had the distinct privilege of assisting in the development of their impressionable minds. I have shaped lives not only through the passing on of knowledge, but also through instilling values and beliefs. My mission then was not merely to educate my students solely with academics, but also to provide them with the skills they would need to effectively communicate and be productive citizens in our community. This I did each day, knowing that the day I had been given, that one opportunity to make a difference in the life of a child would come no more. Isn't that wonderful? You think I ever thought somebody doing that dissertation would include something I wrote?
That's amazing. We do
Isn't
have,
that amazing?
yes. Well, we do have a question that came in. Since 3 of your brothers and 3 of your nieces went to Wiley College. Please tell us how you opted not to go to that one and why that was so important in your family's life, and why did you go someplace else?
I have regretted that all my life. Let me tell you what is really funny about that. I was supposed to be another Marinette. I was deferred you. Now, if I had gone to Wiley, I would have been another Marinette. That's one thing about Wiley. They learned, they could sing, and they traveled all over the world with choirs. And so that's one reason I really, but another reason too, Prairie View was very, very large. And you could go somewhere, you wouldn't know that person, was from Prairie View. But I noticed those Wiley students, because Richard being a minister, he was a chaplain at Wiley at one time. When they had conventions, conferences at Houston, it would be at First Methodist. So I'd leave my school and go down and go to lunch with them. And they knew each other. They were like brothers and sisters. And that's why I regretted going to Prairie View. One, because I didn't sing. I was working so hard, I didn't have time, really. I really worked. When you read that book, I can't believe I did that. But I made it. But anyway, that's why I didn't go. But I'm glad you mentioned that. When I'm with them, I just feel so left out, because they know everybody, and they're very close. They're like brothers and sisters.
That's great. Great story. Does anyone else have any questions here in our audience here? No?
Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Follins, yes.
Mama Ernestine, you're doing fantastic.
Yes, doing fantastic.
Yeah, look fantastic. Talk about the importance of passing on generational knowledge and wealth through information. I always say knowledge is wealth, and passing on from generations. Talk about your great-grandson Chase and what message you'd like to leave with him, without having to obviously read the, you have wonderful material in the book about that. And it was just marvelous to have, been reading that. But talk about what message you'd like to leave with him and perhaps Generation Z and millennials. What kinds of things in terms of excellence, education-wise?
Okay, now this was the first boy in my family, so he was spoiled. Realize he thought he was smarter than we were, and he was. I was attending those writing classes at the time, so we would all talk about our grandchildren. So when I left, I wrote them a letter about Chase. And I want to read it to you. It's very enjoyable, very funny. You got any children, and he was about 4 years old when he was doing this. Riding to school one morning with Granny, that's Reverend. Chase, Granny, I've got this string too tight on my head. Granny, looking around to the back seat to see what Chase was talking about. She sees a string tied around Chase's hand. First lady, she yelled, "Boy, how on earth did you do that? You have cut off your circulation. Now I'm going to have to cut off your hand." Randy, can't you just cut the string? See, at Grandma's house, at me. I got up about 6:30 one morning, wrote letters and paid bills at the kitchen table. Soon Chase came into the kitchen looking for breakfast. I reminded him it wasn't a school day so he could sleep longer. He chose to crawl into my bed and watch cartoons. Around 7:30 a.m. I called to Chase. "Chase, breakfast is ready. Go wash your face and brush your teeth." Soon Chase arrived at the table and stood behind his chair while looking at what I had prepared for him. Cold cereal, blueberries, he loves them, and milk. One slice of toast with one slice of turkey bacon so he can fold it over and make it himself a sandwich. This is one of his favorites. And a glass of orange juice. I had prepared for him and said, Grandma, what have you been doing all this time? All this time and all you have is a little bitty breakfast. He's not just like a man. He said, Grandma eating dinner while listening to the news. Oh, this is a good one. The tiger attacked the boys at Stanford School. Remember that in the background. Chase loves animals. He has all kinds of books about animals. He knows everything about animals. He has been saying since he was about 3 years old, I'm going to be a zookeeper. Chase, Grandma, those boys did something to that tiger. They teased that tiger. Teenagers would do it. He called talking about teenagers. He's about 3 or 4. Teenagers would do anything. They didn't have to kill that tiger, Grandma. But Chase, they had to kill him. He had killed that boy. They didn't have to kill him. Chase, Grandma. Okay, you say you want to be a zookeeper. What would you have done, Mr. Zookeeper? Chase, I would have shot him with a dart. He would have fallen asleep, and we would have carried him and turned him loose in the wild. Grandma. But Chase, he killed a man. He will kill again, Chase. Not if they don't go out into the wild where he is. Here's one more. Okay, this is a good one. Deborah had one of her school, Deborah was the principal too. Deborah had one of her school custodians to come to her home in hopes of hiring her to clean for her. She was Mexican American. Deborah asked Chase to say hello to her. Chase greeted her in Spanish. Surprised, but pleased, the lady responded in Spanish. Deborah said, that's all he knows. Then Chase proceeded to speak in Spanish to the lady. And the lady spoke back to Chase in Spanish. Deborah said, Mama, I don't know what they said, but he's surprised that they got me. And this is one he embarrassed her. Chase at school, first grade, after a discussion about Martin Luther King. Chase's answer to the teacher's question, what is your dream? Chase, my dream is to be able to talk to animals. You know we wanted to kill him. But anyway, I did public speaking, as I told you. And one here I wrote in 1980. And Chase was coming in to be a young man. And I wanted him to hear what I said in that. In fact, my address was for young people. So it's in here, and I want you to read it. It's beautiful. It's called, see if you can find it, it's the very back of it. It's back. Okay. It's in the very back.
86.
Page 86, I think.
86.
Yeah, I think that was
I think it's 86 or something.
right. It's not there.
I'm Ernestine, is that page 86?
No,
86?
no,
No?
not my brother's keeper.
Is that page 86? You'll look at that? Page 86?
A letter to my great-grandson Chase, page 86.
Well, yes, but over here it is.
Oh.
Yeah. Following that, I had spoken at another school
Oh,
in in Brazoria County. And, this was at my father's church. They asked me if I would speak. The young adults, it was the Young Adults of Ward Chapel United Methodist Church, Angleton, Texas. Presents Miss Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell, speaker. It was Youth Day, that's what it was. And it was Sunday, March 30th, 1980, 11 a.m. But a lot of what was said here, I wanted Chase to hear it. It's written. And if you get a chance, please read it. And read it to your children. They need to hear that.
Yes, another question here. Thank you. We have another question from someone on Zoom. It says, what advice do you have for parents of young children today?
Well, I'm glad I don't have one. Now, I'm not saying that against teachers. These teachers do the best they can. But there's so much going on. And my daughter tutors, she's been retired how many years? 12 years. And she tutors, and she's so good. Parents hear about her because they have to tutor the children that are being taught in school. But how can they learn with all of what's going on now? So, what I say to the parents, support the students. Don't fight them. And support those teachers. Believe me, they've done the best they can. I have a poem here that I made up. You know, the same, similar. This was similar. What was going on before, because I gave this to the teachers when I was selling my products. I wrote this. Now, you listen to what I'm saying here. This I don't know when, I think I do know. It's down here. I'm gonna see if I can read it. I am a teacher. I never see if you can find it, but this is too small. Why is too fine it is? Let me tell you about this real quick.
Teacher's Creed. That's page
Okay.
6.
My mother's family came up in Macbeth, Texas, a small community. My father's family, well, they were just all around, all over Texas. But from these two families, look for the list of colleges they attended. We have a list of, it's amazing what those people did, our ancestors, and how many children we have going to top schools all over the United States. Now here's one I want to talk about. This young lady played the cello, and they had some kind of big affair in Houston, and Mrs. Bush, Barbara Bush, was there. This child played the cello. And when it was over, she said, show me her mother. And they did. She asked her, she said, I want to give her a scholarship to Juilliard. She said, oh no, she's just in the 10th grade. She said, I tell you what, I'll let her go in the 11th grade, but she can't go now. She went to Juilliard, and just let me tell you like this here, cellist Tahara Whitaker, originally from Houston, Texas, has performed for audiences in the United States, Chile, France, Italy, and Japan. Solo engagements include a performance with the National Symphony Orchestra or National Anti-Defamation League, Concert for Hope at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., a performance at Merkin Concert Hall for the Guild of Composers based in New York, and an appearance with the New England Conservatory Symphony at Jordan Hall, Boston, Maryland. Ms. Whittington was featured as a soloist at the Fine and Performing Arts of African American Symposium 2000, Enhancing Education, which was held in Ann Arbor and Detroit, Michigan. She's the first prize winner of the 1999 state competition for black and white continuous string players in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And that's all I'm gonna read. You read it in the book. But think of her background. My father's sister was her great-great-grandmother. Now, her mother was a music teacher. I have to admit that. So, you and I know both where she got that talent from. But to think that because of Ms. Bush, seeing what that kid had, offered her a scholarship, and she got it. So, one thing we want to try to encourage our children, even if they really feel I can't do it. I said I couldn't do it. But encourage them to try, and don't give up. I think you asked me for their time, but I want to read this by the teachers. Support the teachers. The Teachers' Creed. I made this up. They were having problems similar to now. And I gave this when they ordered anything from me, I gave this to them for free. I felt so sorry for those teachers. The Teachers' Creed. I am a teacher. Without me, there is no other career. In the great forest of humanity, I must always stand the tallest. But it is to me, the wildflowers, the weeds, the bushes, the shrubs, the hedges, and the trees of average height look for help to guide them, to help themselves. I believe in myself and my ability to teach and to expand the lives of others into productive citizens of the universe. Although life may be hard for me at this time, I will continue to teach. Perhaps not in a classroom, because I may not have a classroom just now. But I will continue to shine the light of knowledge so others may stand on my shoulders and help others to learn and grow each day. I will make the most of each day and accept each challenge as an opportunity. For I am a teacher, and teaching is my passion. The only thing I can say is, stay in there and fight. We need you. We need your teachers. And let's support them, please. Let's support them.
Yes, thank you very much. That's very inspiring, that Teacher's Creed. It's very, and of course the Learner's Creed, which is the title of your book. And you also have a website, thelearnerscreed.com, where people can find out more information and find links to purchase the book. But I wanted to just, we're so grateful that you were able to join us this weekend, Juneteenth. And of course, July 19th, tomorrow, marks an important milestone in the history of the United States, as the last slaves in Texas received word that they were freed a full 2.5 years after President Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation. And it's like, and anyway, Dr. Follins has given me a copy of the governor's the message, the proclamation from the governor about Juneteenth. So if I may, I'll read that now. Throughout history, many dedicated Americans have taken up the mantle to fight for freedom and ensure liberty for all. On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and slaves in Union-occupied areas of Confederate states still in bondage and ruthlessly oppressed became free men, women, and children whose inalienable right to liberty would no longer be snuffed out by the cruel hand of slavery. 2.5 years later, In June of 1865, more than 2,000 federal soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, arrived in Texas. Granger's men marched throughout Galveston, delivering the news of liberation and the newfound potential for a brighter future for all citizens. It was from that moment that Juneteenth was born. Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration recognizing the end of slavery. As we reflect on its 157 years later, let us not only celebrate the progress we have made, but also reaffirm our commitment to the work started by President Lincoln. He understood that change was necessary to move forward as a united nation, and his effort to ensure that our God-given, inalienable rights were equally recognized in all citizens remains the bedrock of American society today, reminding us that no challenge is too difficult to overcome by working together. The important work now falls on the shoulders of present-day Americans to acknowledge and learn from the mistakes of the past and to lead our country by working together as one nation. Thanks to the dedicated work of Texas' Black community and the many supporters of this great initiative, the recognition of Juneteenth has also grown. Al Edwards, a Black state legislator, was essential to Juneteenth becoming an official Texas state holiday in 1980. The first commemoration of emancipation accorded official state recognition. In order to continue the work set in motion by President Lincoln, Representative Edwards, and countless others, we must champion love, understanding, and respect while remaining steadfast in the fight against hatred, prejudice, and racism. Today, I encourage all Texans to come together in celebration of Juneteenth, to reflect on our shared history and the freedom this holiday represents, and to join together in working toward a brighter future for all. As Juneteenth's message of empowerment spreads across Texas and beyond, there is no doubt the Lone Star State's future will be fortified with freedom, equality, and opportunity. Very good words, and thank you again so much for joining us. And do you have any other further comments you'd like to make on this awesome
I'd like to suggest that we do more oral history with our families. We need that.
Yes.
Because that's what we got from my father. He'd sit on the front porch, and we would sit down on the floor, and he would just tell us about his family. And so we need that. So do some oral history with your children, and then they can learn. They develop pride in their family.
Yes, I think that's very, very important, and those are great words of advice for all of us to treasure the memories that our families can pass down to us. That if otherwise we'll lose them. We don't want to lose them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And again, your book was very, very inspiring. I enjoyed it, and we enjoyed having you here virtually. And everybody here in the audience was happy to see you again. Of course, an Angleton native who made it good. Oh yes, and we're so proud again to have you here, and your accomplishments, just amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. So, any other comments, Dr. Follins? Do you have anything? Because you co-wrote the book, and
do you want to introduce the rest of your family
Oh,
that's
yes.
back there? Let them say hi. The rest of your family, say hi.
I don't know who's holding.
Oh, they're behind. Who's coming? Who's with you?
We're eating pizza.
Okay. We want to say thank you for supporting. Okay, come on. Hey, Kim, how you say hi? There you go. Deborah, how you doing? All right. There she is. All right. There you go. Tiffany. Chase, where's Chase? Oh, Chase. That's the great grandson.
Chase does left.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Chase got pizza. Yeah, pizza now.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, wait, okay.
Just a minute.
Oh, he's coming back. How you doing? Hi. How you doing? Hi. How we doing? Okay. There you go.
It's a party.
I wouldn't have made 93 without
There you go. Great job. You did very well. Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
Yes, and thanks to everybody virtually attending us this event again. We're so pleased and happy that you let us have your opening book launch party here in Angleton. I'd like to remind remind people that the books are available. You can purchase them at any online retailers, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. And again, if you do choose Amazon, you can use the Amazon Smile program and select the Angleton Friends of the Library, and they will get a portion. And if anyone has a book they want to get autographed, they can mail it to you along with a stamped self-addressed envelope to Ms. Ernestine Stewart-Mitchell, P.O. Box 1384, Missouri City, Texas 77459. And be sure to include a note if you want any special message in there with your signature. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Ernestine? This is a
No, thank you very much. I can relax now. This is.
I can relax too because I was nervous too, being someone who's so accomplished as you are.
Let's thank our moderator, Tom West.
And I'd like to thank my coworkers who helped us overcome the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning. But it turned out so well, and we are so happy. So thank you again. Thank you so much.
All right.
And we look forward to your next book.